sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty. Wake up.
Hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Richard Koritz, and I'm proud to be the co-host of You Gotta Laugh to Keep From Crying with my good friend, my good brother, my good comrade. And I'm not even mentioning the word how long we've been those things, because that takes into account the word old. Brother O.W. Sweeney. It's a pleasure to be
brother,
here.
how you doing? Look here. You said went ahead and told the people the truth, because we are old.
Yes,
we ain't
we are.
young, but we still out here fighting for the labor movement.
Yes.
And we still trying to let them understand why the North Carolina
Triad
Triad Jobs with
Justice.
Justice, where you can reach us at
336-272-2758.
We still got that process of letting the people know that the Triad
Jobs with Justice.
Jobs with Justice is still out here fighting to
And-
get people jobs so they can
and-
get paid a
and-
just salary.
And that we need to unite to get justice.
That's right.
The working people, and even a lot of things, the 99% with us.
That's right.
Up against that tough 1%, and
That's right.
especially that
But
real
the-
tough
but the
1/10
point
of
is,
1%.
the point is, the people don't see that 1%, they're united.
Yeah, that's right.
It's only there where they get to divide and conquer of us working folks down here.
Right.
That they define. For instance, now, Hillary Clinton book, What Happened, and a lot of people don't want to look at
That what happened.
what happened or really understand what happened.
I guess she was talking about the 2016 presidential election.
Oh yes, oh yes,
Yeah.
and she wondered why she wasn't chosen. And one major thing I noticed she said that Bernie Sanders was the major cause of her losing to Trump. He was one of the major factors causing her to lose to Trump. But she never said that Bernie Sanders lied. She never said that Bernie Sanders told one lie on her.
Right.
So therefore, it wasn't Bernie Sanders that caused her to lose the election. It was whose fault to cause her to lose the election? It was hers.
And the Democratic National Committee.
That's right.
And that's why the woman that was the chair of that committee.
Diane Schultz, what was her name? From Florida.
Right.
I can't think of
The
it.
congresswoman from
Yeah,
Florida.
from Florida, who cheated
Yeah, and had to resign
because she
right
got caught.
on the eve of the Democratic National Convention.
Because she got
She was caught.
got caught.
And her punishment was she was then immediately hired 10 minutes later by the Clinton campaign. That's how shameless
Clinton campaign
and she were, and the Democratic National Committee as a whole. And they rigged the election themselves so that it became a contest between Clinton and Trump rather than between Sanders and Trump.
And a lot of people didn't understand that this anti-Wall Street sentiment that was out there, that people really didn't look at it, which Bernie Sanders was closely related to the 99%,
Right.
whereas Hillary Clinton was closely related to
Wall
the
Street.
1%.
That's right.
All right? Now, even though Donald Trump is part of that 1%,
Right.
but he was outside that Washington politics.
And New York and the New York finance, the Wall Street finance group.
Well, he was outside of
That's
that.
right. And he
So-
played off of it.
That's right.
Like, as Sanders did, except that Sanders had a program
That's right.
that meant the 99% and the working people
That's right.
would end up getting some more substantial crumbs, let's say, than normally would be gotten with a Democrat.
That's right.
But since the crumbs come out of the rulers of the country, they didn't want to give any more crumbs than they had to. When they thought they had their candidate, Hillary Clinton, had that election sewn up. And so they didn't want to promise, and they didn't promise anything with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I know. She was running around talking about better together, but Trump was talking about crazy stuff, building a wall, deportation,
Right.
And also crazy stuff. He was talking about doing something that some people like,
Well, but he also talked
as
about
racist
the fact,
as it was.
and he also talked about the fact that the people in the country, the ordinary folks, were suffering.
Yeah.
And he even played a little bit of the anti-Wall Street tune.
That's right.
Until he got in.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Hillary Clinton, I mean,
She was an apologist for Wall Street from the word go.
and furthermore, the platform and what she discussed, that with Bernie Sanders is what she was going to say, what she was going to do for the people, he never brought it out.
Right.
All she was talking about was better together.
Yeah.
I mean, people.
Well, she wasn't talking about anything that affected the people's welfare. What she really talked about was, I'm better than Trump. And that was about it.
That's right.
Which that didn't cost Wall Street anything, although it ended up costing Wall Street to have to deal with Trump rather than their loyal representative.
Because a lot of
Clinton.
people was fed up with that Washington politics, that they call it.
Right.
So, I mean, and the whole thing you gather, if you look at it, Trump or Hillary Clinton, the 99% was not being represented.
Right. They didn't have any
That's right.
any skin in that game.
That's right.
But I got to remind you of something you often say on our show, and that is that the Washington politicians get what are sometimes called donations, but what you refer to as, if it's got strings attached to it, it's a bribe. So I'm just reminding our audience, usually if they tune on to some of our other shows or they look back on YouTube at some of our previous shows, they'll see you making that very point.
Well,
and that's the point here. Hillary Clinton was a Washington politician, but the strings attached to her as a puppet for Wall Street were so present, they were so obvious, that most of the people, even the ones that voted for her, held their nose while they voted. And that's just a fact. But we had a discussion with a good friend of ours just before this show, talking about the Russians had an impact on the election. I think Russia had some impact on the election.
That's right. But did the United States have any impacts on the Russian election?
They've had huge impacts on the Russian election.
So
that's number one.
So now it's wrong.
Yeah,
see,
right. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just
When
saying,
the U.S.
when U.S. is doing,
when the
it's all
U.S.
right.
empire interferes anywhere,
It's all right.
okay,
That's
including Russia.
good. That's right. Good guys. We got
Right.
the white hat on all the time.
That's right.
But when somebody do it to us,
Yeah,
they
then
got the black hat on and they the dog.
Right. And even though Tillerson, for example, represented ExxonMobil in Russia, that's his only foreign policy experience coming in as Secretary of State. So let's make a deal was right on the first agenda, obviously, of the Trump administration. Let's make an oil deal. Let's try to get the restrictions taken off of Russia so that we can have ExxonMobil make a killing. That was definitely part of Tillerson's appointment by Trump. And it indicates that the Russians had an interest in Trump being elected. And so, but
you got to understand that Hillary Clinton was kind of hard on them Russians.
Absolutely.
And they didn't want to be bothered with her.
Right.
So, I mean, they did make a little
it was
peace.
self-interest
but the whole
for them to do it.
But see, the whole thing, the way I see it, all them big wigs up there they talking about, all they was doing was miseducating the 99%. The 99% need to be educated, which I would like to, if we can get to a little conversation about the labor school that just ended.
Well, before we get to that, the fact of the matter is that that Clinton was leading this U.S. government to war against Russia, and it was around the fact that the U.S. government has surrounded Russia with U.S. bases and tightened the hold on Russia to such a point that the Russian people were demanding from Putin, not the other way around. The Russian people were demanding from Putin that he stick up for Russia against the aggressive United States, and the most aggressive force was Hillary Clinton, representing Wall Street. So initially, Trump's election meant, on that one question at least, that the world was better off with Trump than with Clinton, at least on that question of the U.S.-Russia relations. And the fact is that they were able to push buttons on the U.S. people around anti-Russian sentiment, and kind of turn that around. But when Clinton says that, what happened, the rigging of the Democratic primaries by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton in her favor had a much bigger role in the outcome of that election.
Yes,
I'm convinced that Sanders would, if you could ever have the election being held where Sanders and Trump would have been on an equal footing, I have no doubt that Sanders would have
There
won
would have been
hands down.
no equal footings.
Right, exactly, because Sanders actually was
He
saying
had a
things.
program.
That's right.
for
That
the
appealed to the people.
and he was
Right.
talking to the 99%.
Right, and like Trump, he was also opposing Wall Street.
That's right.
And except
Not
that
only
Trump
opposing
was-
Wall Street, but he was somewhat, even though he was a senator, he somewhat was outside of that Washington politics thought. See, he said he was a democratic socialist.
Yeah, but he wasn't. But he wasn't outside the Washington politics. Trump was more outside
No,
of
what
the
I'm
Washington
saying,
politics.
the reason
yeah.
he was outside the Washington politics,
you mean the
because he
Democratic
wasn't chummy.
Republican,
He
yeah.
wasn't chummy with all those big donors.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
He
but
wasn't bought and paid for. He spoke up for the people.
Yeah, but one thing that the great black journalist from Philadelphia, Mumia Abu-Jamal, pointed out during the 2016 election. By the way, Brother Mumia is still incarcerated
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania prison. But Brother Mumia pointed out at the 2016 election that Hillary and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were close friends.
Yeah.
And even, there were the photos of them sitting right up in the front row in the middle at the marriage, at the last marriage of Donald Trump.
That's right.
And
They so much of enemies that
right,
he invited them to the wedding.
right, and
How you invite somebody to your wedding,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden y'all enemies.
right, and well, anyway, that's the fact of the matter is that they both represent interests of some of the 1%.
That's right.
It's just that Trump represents mainly Trump's family empire
Holdings.
and Clinton represents the U.S. empire in general.
And I'm still going to maintain that both of them was against the 99% because they wasn't talking about it. Does nothing to educate the 99%. And I still want to get back to talking about this labor school we just went past,
Okay.
and how the presenters was talking about unity mostly among working class people.
Well, yeah. So it was a 5-week,
Five
5
course,
Sundays
that's right.
in a row, and Sunday afternoons for a couple hours.
That's right.
And we had an outstanding group of presenters, starting with an old brother of
Right.
yours and mine, Ajamu Dillahunt,
Right.
who for more than 20 years was American Postal Workers Union president of the Raleigh local, and for more than 20 years, I think he was also the director of education
Right.
for the American Postal Workers Union in the state of North Carolina. And Ajamu was still an activist, and he's about our age. He's
Right.
he's going to die with his boots on whenever that happens.
He's
And a good fighter. And he spoke about the environmental justice issue, really about environmental justice and the importance of jobs for workers.
Right.
Because the 1%
That's
and
right.
their representatives like Clinton and Trump will try to pit
Workers against workers.
the workers. We'll try to pit the workers against the environmental issue.
Right.
And even in relation to the Native American tribe in North Dakota, who were dealing with trying to keep their tribal lands from
Right.
being contaminated and violated by that pipeline.
Yes.
Trump ended up meeting with union representatives right after he was elected, who represented workers that were going to have some of these few jobs for a short period of time.
That's right.
Out there, as a means of trying to pit the union workers
Workers against
specifically
workers.
against the Native Americans.
Workers
at
against
that point.
workers.
Yes, it was, and so that was a good example. But Ajamu spoke about how using more environmentally friendly energy, especially,
Right.
that would actually create more jobs, and that this whole thing was really a phony
Yeah, it was a farce.
dichotomy, a phony opposition between the workers and the need for decent jobs on the one hand, and concern for the environment on the other. So that was a good unity, like you said.
Yeah, for the workers.
That he presented. The next week we had Corinne Mack, the president of the Charlotte NAACP,
Yeah.
who used to be she was the first woman leader of the New York Transit Union.
Yeah.
and you spent some time up there in
Yes.
New York too, and you know that union is a particularly important one in New York City.
Transportation.
Absolutely, and Sister Corinne is an outstanding militant NAACP leader.
Right.
If we can put those two
Together.
things in the same sentence, and she was a militant labor leader, and she spoke on something she knows well, which is the importance of having unity between the labor movement and the civil rights movement
Right.
in our time, and she also taught some good pointers about the responsibility of union leaders to involve their members in the struggle
That's right.
for civil rights.
There's no need for you to be a leader of a union if you ain't got the people involved in what you're doing.
Right.
So they know what's happening with them, know what you're all about, fighting for them. But the point is, a whole lot of labor leaders don't understand that we keep preaching that we all are laborers and we need to stick together.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them want to justify their job as to how much they can get in good with certain people. It's not the certain people you need to get in good with, it's them union dues paying members.
True. The third week, Justin Flores, the vice president now of the whole Farm Labor Organizing Committee in the country, FLOC, spoke and pointed up the fact that farm labor has been one of the most marginalized,
Right.
even during the Roosevelt administration, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the New Deal. Farm labor and including tremendous amount of black labor in the South and white labor in the
Yes.
South were excluded from the protections, the labor protections that most of the rest of the labor movement managed to gain during that period. And it was directly
divide and conquer tactic.
Right, and actually it helped perpetuate the white supremacist plantation rule
Yeah.
in the South during that whole period. But Justin spoke about the importance of all of the workers rallying behind the farm labor in this state, which is where FLOC is one of the main
Right.
states, along with Ohio, where FLOC is mainly concentrated. A lot of it is in tobacco, and because of probably partly at least because of my connection to the great Local 22 of the 40s.
Yeah.
I've had a special ongoing relationship with FLOC in North Carolina as they go up against R.J. Reynolds to try to get better representation, better conditions for farm labor that they're involved with.
But the way you say that, we can connect that to the $15 an hour movement with those fast food workers. Because they all still are struggling. A lot of people understand, and this is one way you have to get people have to get it together to understand that one worker should not be putting another worker down, and they should stand in unity.
Yeah. And actually, that's been a problem. Specifically, the highly paid tobacco workers working for the cigarette companies, including here, have generally had an approach, and their unions have had an approach that there's only a limited pot of money that these poor tobacco companies have, and that if the farm workers in the tobacco fields get more money, that means that the tobacco workers in these factories would get less money. And of course, that isn't true. But it's something that, again, as you pointed out, in other areas, divide and conquer.
Make one person think they're better than the other.
And give that, and that they have a right to have unity and organization on their job, but they don't give that same right or recognize that same right.
Yeah, but labor
the farm labor.
Labor got to get rid of that thought.
Absolutely.
Labor have to understand that labor is labor, and we fight for all labor.
Right. Amen. So, and then the fourth week, it was Brother John Crawford, the president of the Triad Central Labor Council, and formerly the president of the United Auto Workers local in Thomas Built Bus.
Okay.
And John was very good on the whole issue of solidarity, including the need for auto workers and the Auto Workers Union to be more effective in fighting to get the union into both a plant in Tennessee that was a Volkswagen plant and a Nissan plant just recently in Mississippi. And he spoke very well on that issue and in general on the need for solidarity among all working people. So you missed that one. But you would have been proud of him because that's one of your strong points.
The whole thing is he's talking about the people who are in this here boat, and you want to think you that much higher than one of them, but the boat's sinking, and you still thinking you that much higher of them, and the boat keep going down. Yeah. You still think you that much.
Sooner or later, you're going to drown too.
That's right.
Yeah, I got you.
So therefore, you have to come together as unity, as workers around the world, because that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. It's all about them exploiting the workers so they can make the big profit.
Right. Yeah.
But too many people out there think that, or been brainwashed to think it's all right for them to exploit you. No, it's not all right for them to exploit you.
Right.
You have a right to a decent living just like they have a right to a decent living.
And that brings me to my presentation the other day at the final of the 5 labor school classes. And in particular, I shared with the brothers and sisters there an article from within the last year or two about the fast food workers in Denmark, the country of Denmark, in Scandinavia, who at the time were already receiving $20 an hour, plus full health benefits in their country.
Yeah.
And these fast food companies were doing just fine over there too. And I think that's important because many of us think that the way we found the situation, like for example, that so many adults and people trying to support a family on McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, you name it.
$8-9 an hour if you look.
$7.50.
Yeah.
And so on, dollars an hour.
On a part-time job, I might add.
Yeah. Well, and then they need 2 or 3, as you pointed out before.
That's
right. But regardless, that job is not a minimum wage job.
No.
If you work in that job, your life is being spent working there.
That's right.
And especially if you have to support a family. But regardless, any worker that's putting their life into that job should be making a living wage, as you and I talk about.
Oh, right.
And so this article points out that in Denmark, fast food workers doing the same work as these workers here for $7 or $8 or $9, $7.25 or $8 or $9, with no benefits. They're doing it in Denmark for $20 an hour with full benefits.
That's right.
And those companies, the same companies that are fast food companies over here, are over there, those U.S. companies. And they wouldn't be there if they weren't making a profit.
That's right.
There either.
But they brainwash people in this here country to thinking that if we give them this amount of money, we got to raise this hamburger price up. So,
right. So one thing that we want to share with our viewers is that fact that a fast food worker deserves a living wage in the United States.
Well, I don't want to say fast food workers. I want to just say workers, period, because to me it seems like
every worker deserves a living wage.
That's right.
Agreed. Okay.
Because one way or the other, especially here in this capitalistic society that we on,
right.
And you notice they always harping on people's salaries. They don't want to pay people decent salary, but yet they get mad when they go down there and apply for corporate welfare. Now, when I say corporate welfare, I don't mean the fact that they're applying to the corporation for welfare. They're going there asking for tax dollars to supplement their income.
Right.
When the corporation is not paying them no money and they're not paying no taxes. All right. They're not paying no taxes, so they can't get a decent wage. I mean, the old story has been around for years. Well, Walmart had their supervisor teaching the workers how to go down and apply for public assistance.
Right, that's right.
All right,
But that's a direct subsidy for Walmart. That's not even that isn't even the same
welfare
thing.
is what I call it, because
Well.
the corporation ain't paying them. The federal government is paying them.
Out of our tax money,
tax dollars.
paying
That's corporate
subsidized,
welfare.
But it's a subsidy for a company,
the
for a
corporation.
company, Walmart, that is not, that by their own acknowledgement of training people to go game the system.
Not paying them enough.
Absolutely.
And then what we other workers do? Oh, he going there getting public assistance. We mad. You get mad at the other workers rather than mad at the people who are really causing that.
Right.
So we got about 2 minutes left, brother. So I guess
Yeah.
we'll have to wrap this up. But
I wanted to say this about the presentation I did the other day. That was summing up the theme of that whole school, which was social justice unionism.
right.
And the way to understand it is simply this: social justice means fighting for justice in this unjust society.
Right.
And unionism, that is social justice unionism, is not business unionism.
Right.
It's not, I'm worried about that owner, but I'm worried about the people.
That's right.
And that's a good unionism. It's like you and I talked about on this show, the solidarity among brothers and sisters,
Workers.
across workers across the world.
We have to understand that we workers must come together. So only thing I got to do is tell the people now is to dial 336-272-2758.
Because in our unity lies our strength.
And if we
Yeah.
continue to fight each other, we ain't gonna get nowhere. We gotta realize
We may get to a world war.
Yeah.
That's what we may
Oh
get.
yeah.
But this way, what we need is universal brotherhood and sisterhood.
That's right.
And that's what the workers promise.
That is. Nice talking to you, brother.
Always good, brother. Love you.
They're doing a dirty deed. Old man sleeping on the cold street. They took his dream, he's gone to seed. What do you say? What do you say? What do you say? People of the world, come on, let's come together. Working people of the world unite, let's come together. We got nothing to lose but our chains. Nothing to lose but our chains.